Oh, man, people. Oh, man. Just when you thought last week's episode was already great enough. Yes, I have a shaved head. No, I don't want to hear anything about it, man. Eli, episode 5, man. We're already past the halfway point. Entitled Regent figures that, like, they're going to have, like, one of the worst episode titles for one of the most important, crucially important episodes of the season. It's funny because, like, there's not a lot that happens in this episode, but at the same time, it's, like, one of the most crucially important episodes of the season. Are you ready?
Oh, I'm absolutely ready. This episode moved the plot along at the perfect pace, I think, to set up for what's to come, which should be an explosive last few episodes.
Absolutely. All of that and more in tonight's episode of Dragon Watch, House of the Dragon Season 2 recap. Stay tuned.
I was following King Viserys' death.
My brother was a slave to his omens and portents. Anything to make his feckless reign appear to have purpose.
What are we going to do about it?
Did you really think that you could just fly about the realm, trying to steal my brother's throne?
Innocent make us kings. Dragons did.
All right, Eli, episode 5 of season 2 entitled Regent. We actually got the title a little early, which is rather nice. So the big thing about this episode, right? Fallout. Not the show Fallout, just Fallout. We got Rook's Rest last episode. That's a big event. That's a big event in the beginning of the Dance of Dragons, right? Following Blood and Cheese, following Duel of the Twins. That's our first big battle sequence, right? And it's a decisive one too, right? The Blacks lose Rhaenys and Meleys, who are two of their biggest and best fighters. So they are at a heavy disadvantage right now. Daemon is in the Riverlands. They have no clue what's going on with him at all. Rhaenyra is really struggling to figure out what to do next. Everybody else seems to be on their own agenda right now. But the big thing that is established with this episode, first and foremost, from the get-go, is like, okay, we see the fallout of Rook's Rest across everything. And Game of Thrones, in its origin, was really known for doing that really well, specifically with its final episodes, right? The final episodes, which were usually where you saw the fallout effect from the penultimate episodes after such iconic events like Blackwater, like Brands of Castamere, like Watchers on the Wall. Game of Thrones was really well known for that, and House of the Dragons is continuing that, but now with episode 5 as opposed to like the final episode. So knowing that we have 3 episodes left, I mean, the fallout from Rook's Rest, I was like 18 different characters that we're following. Corlys, the opening scene of this episode, Corlys is mourning. Cole and Gwen Hightower return to King's Landing. They're dragging Meleys' head on the tower. You know, you see Hugh Hammer reacting to it. You see everybody reacting to it. Aegon's charred to a crisp being placed on his bed. Like, but even though it seems like the Greens are at an advantage right now, I don't know if any one side is benefiting right now after what happened at Rook's Rest. So just give me your thoughts on that first and foremost.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's funny. I think, we don't know what's going on with Daemon, or the Blacks don't know what's going on with Daemon. I don't think Daemon knows what's going on.
Nobody knows what's going on with Daemon, least of all himself.
Yeah, and but in all seriousness, for sure. Both sides took heavy losses, whether it is in terms of numbers, in terms of, crucial personnel on their sides, or in terms of just, their grips that they have in terms of control and the various territories that they have, right? I mean, you look at how King's Landing dealt with this, right? I mean, they're parading, the severed head of Meleys through the city.
Like,
but that's,
I felt something there. Like, I don't know what it is about me with the show. I don't have the same relationship with this show that I did with Game of Thrones by virtue of the fact that I'm not the same age that I was watching Game of Thrones with House of the Dragon. But at the same time, like, man, I love these dragons. I love these dragons so much. And like seeing the head of Meleys, one of the most majestic and powerful and important dragons in the dance, and then just that head being paraded around. To me, it was the equivalent of Robb Stark after the Red Wedding. That's what that was to me.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I thought it was a great scene. I think it really captured, for such like I feel like the first opening 10-15 minutes of this episode,
there's just
really
this
felt like
aura of just silence, and everybody kind of is seeing it, and they're like, this is wrong. This
100%.
is wrong.
Like, you felt the weight of just everything that happened last episode in terms of the sheer loss, with everything. Even Kristen Cole, that smug look was kind of wiped off his face for a little bit, and just
even he's
my gosh.
Even he's like, are we doing the right thing here? Like, well, what's going on here?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And now the Greens are seemingly a little more divided than before.
Yeah,
so,
a little bit more divided. A little bit more, or more so, rather motivated by fear, I would say, than they were before. Because before, right, when Aegon was ruling, it was kind of like the whole, okay, we're just kind of placating him for now. We're just like, okay, let him run amok, and then once he's out drinking and whoring around, then we'll actually get shit done. Now it's different. Aegon is burned to a crisp, barely alive. They're literally having to like peel his armor off of his skin because there's a great detail that they capture from Fire and Blood where he was burned so badly during that battle that the metal from the armor is literally fused to his skin. Like, he's
Melted
not getting up.
underneath the skin.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that he captured that from the books.
Friggin' detail. And they're like, we need someone to rule here. We need someone to go forth and fight where Aemon can. And Alicent is like, oh, I can do it. And I love how everybody is like, yeah, I don't know if this is gonna...
I love the quote from Varys Strong where it's
Laris,
like,
Laris.
Sorry, Laris. God.
Please, one letter difference. Difference.
I love how he brings up a great point where it's like, yeah, what's the point of usurping the actual female heir if we're gonna just put a woman on the throne ourselves, right?
Exactly.
That's gonna make us look hypocritical to the the rest of the realms, which I absolutely love that because they kind of dug their own grave in this moment.
Yeah.
At least from the perspective of Alicent, who I'm so glad that we were in her head for most of that scene.
Yes.
Especially when it's like zooming in and the rest of the meeting is kind of going on without her. I just thought, and I mean, brilliant acting as always. Like, I mean, they gotta have another Emmy nomination, right? I mean, there's no way she doesn't.
Well, the ridiculous thing is that despite the overwhelming success of the first season of House of the Dragon, none of the actors got nominated. None of them. Patty Considine, Matt Smith, Emma D'Arcy, Olivia Cook, none of them got nominated for season 1.
I thought Emma D'Arcy did, no?
Nope.
Oh,
no, she
okay.
didn't. I nominated her for my awards. She was not nominated for an Emmy. Yeah.
Maybe that's what I'm thinking.
That's
about.
probably what it was. Yeah, the Talking TVs once again outstripping and outpacing the Emmys at every turn.
What can I say, Dom? You just got the better content.
I have the best nominations. What can I say? No, it's but I'm so glad that you brought that up because that was probably, even though the Greens do not have as much screen time in this episode as they normally have in the past 4 episodes, I feel like the past 4 episodes have had a really good balance between the blacks and the greens. Kind of a little bit more emphasis on the greens than I would have thought. But what's so interesting is this is a black-heavy episode, right? But even with the greens, with their limited screen time, I love the 2 things. One, how Alicent, even despite still kind of running things, now that Otto's out of the picture for the most part, like, she's still being outstripped by men at every chance she's getting. And she's realizing now, like, oh, like, these are the fallacies of our side. And the minute that Aemon steps up and takes control, it's automatic. You can feel the power shift in the room. See, this is the thing that I loved so much about Game of Thrones. Is Game of Thrones was so amazing at handling these transitions of like these higher ups, right? These elites of elites of elites, but still making them feel so human. And oh man, the minute that Aemon takes that seat, you can tell like, oh, he has been waiting for this. He has been waiting for this from the minute that Ewan Mitchell was introduced in episode 8 of last season when he transitioned from like the little kid who claimed Vagar and lost his eye to now he's like an adult. It's like, oh, he's been waiting for this for a long time.
I love the visualization in every single one of these because it feels like, and even in the first season, right? Like that very first episode, with Corley sitting across from Viserys, right? Like it feels like anytime someone is opposing the active king or regent or whoever is kind of holding the center of power at that time, they're always sitting directly across from them at the table. And in this scene, right, there is no one at the throne, and then Aemon just ends up walking. I mean, I just love how they they capture that, right? And you literally, like you said, you literally feel the shift as it happens, like in the room.
And even better, the scene with Helena too. Also, when like Helena's only seen in like a couple episodes, like we haven't seen her really since episode 2, and Helena's
she's
just
had
there.
a couple lines this season.
I don't even know if that's actually her in the scene or if Aemon's just hallucinating. I mean, Aemon hasn't been hallucinating like Daemon is. We'll get to that in a little bit, but she's just like, was the price worth it? He doesn't say anything, but we all know in his mind. It's like, again, and we even saw that like the preview for next episode too, when you see him like with Aegon's charred corpse, and he's like, but I know he's not dead technically, but he's just like, in his mind, we all know he's like, he has been waiting for this to be able to pull off a move like this for a long time. Like I said, he knew exactly what he was doing last episode when he charred Aegon to a corpse, to a crisp last episode. And Aemon's gotten everything that he's wanted, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, and the best part, I mean, in some way, I sympathize with Aemon. Like
100%. After seeing what he went through, what Aegon put him through as a kid, man.
Yeah.
Oh man, yeah.
It's crazy. Like I loved what, and I mean, I love how Alicent, like, even though she's looking to, the Grand Maester, and she's looking to, Laris, and she's looking to Kristen Cole, like
all these people who she thought were her allies, and
seemingly in her corner, and and then they all just kind of they flip the cards so quickly.
They give all their individual reasons, but she knows at the end of the day, she's like, fuck. I never had a chance. I never had a chance.
And now just the strain that there seems to be between her and Eamon, it
Yeah.
makes you wonder how much, especially now with the context of the conversation she had with Rhaenyra in episode
Yes.
3,
And knowing, obviously, the way in which she screwed up.
I almost, when I was watching that scene originally, I almost like envisioned like her little like mental crisis when they were like they said when the camera was like zooming in on her. I almost envisioned that as like does she even want to keep her own kids on the throne? Not that now that
I
there's
don't know if
nobody,
she's seeing too many benefits of it at this point.
right? I mean,
Right.
now with the huge division in King's Landing,
and she knows, even though like she doesn't get confirmation, and Cole is clearly covering up for Eamon in that instance, and he claims that like, oh, he's protecting her from Eamon, but like she knows that Eamon was responsible for what happened to Aegon. She knows, it's one of those, it's like the mother's intuition, what have you. Like she absolutely knows Aegon was responsible. You even see it in the preview for next episode when she's like, at what point is enough? Like, at what point are you going to be satisfied by taking revenge for the things that were done to you as a kid? Like, at a certain point, enough has to be enough, And yeah, it's so well done. And like the argument between her and Cole at the gate is so well done too. And even also when they tie in Hugh Hammer as well, who is like pretty much independent of both the blacks and the green struggle still at this point. But even he is like, again, the effects are starting to be done, where Eamon is like, close off the gates to everybody,
His bed is being made.
Yep. The bed is being made and they're sleeping in it. So that's really all that happens with the greens. The blacks. So the blacks are kind of split apart after Rook's Rest. They are falling apart. Corlys is a mess. Bela and Jace are trying to hold things together. Rhaenyra has no clue what she's doing. Daemon basically outright says, yeah, I'm basically trying to conquer King's Landing in my name. Right. And Rhaenyra can do what she wants. Up to like, Jesus Christ. Even though the fact that like Rook's Rest really isn't a victory for everybody. Obviously, even though the blacks lost a crucial ally, it really was. The Greens still lost Aegon. So, like, that's the thing I love about the Dance of the Dragons as a conflict, too, is that it really is a conflict where no side truly wins. Because everybody dies at the end. Everybody dies at the end. And the few survivors are kind of just left to pick up the pieces. And at the end of the day, they're like, was this conflict really even worth it? Was this civil war even really worth it? It's what Rhaenys said. And honestly, I feel like that's why Rhaenys being the first significant loss of this conflict is really felt so hard. Because she really is the voice of reason in a way that no side really had. As hard as Alicent and Rhaenyra are trying, none of them have the sage wisdom that Rhaenys had, and with her gone and completely out of the picture, like, you can really feel the effect on both sides. And I mean, the blacks just like, what a disaster ship they are right now. Oh, Lord.
For sure. No, I mean, yeah, I mean, just like, I love how they capture, just the layers within layers on both sides, right? No side, Rhaenyra and Aegon, like, they're clinging to what little power they have. And it's like they, ruling, and this is what I just love about the Game of Thrones universe as a whole, is just like power really kind of is an illusion so many times. Like, it's really just a game of balancing favors and just really just trying to keep everyone happy in your corner. And then when they aren't, you really feel the effects of it.
Yeah, I mean, case in point, Daemon and Harrenhal, this whole episode. I mean, this is arguably the most interesting that I've seen Daemon and Harrenhal, to between trying to quell the conflicts between the blacks and the Blackwoods and the Brackens, to his conflict with Alice Rivers. And then at the end, it's like, yeah, he tried to sow peace, obviously. He kind of grows his admiration for the Brackens, the fact that they literally stood up to him on the back of his dragon and were literally like, yeah, we will not yield. And then he sends the Blackwoods to execute peace, thinks that it's done. And then at the end of the day, it's like, oh no, the Blackwoods just used the fact that they have you and your dragon as a protection to, so unknown countless horrific deeds against us, and we will not be allying ourselves with you. So in a way, Daemon's kind of like attempt to maintain and rule in his own way is being shown to be flawed, and Alice Rivers is kind of calling him on that at every moment. But the fact that like he's being haunted by all these weirwood dreams and such, it's clearly not having that much of an effect on him. And I feel like Daemon, in a way, like, it's kind of interesting, seeing Rhaenyra and Aegon and the parallels between their significant others who really want the power that they claim, that being Daemon and Aemond. It really is interesting to see those parallels where even though Daemon is really off in his own corner of the universe right now, he really very much so is attempting to maintain and consolidate power for himself. And in a way, the only character that's really checking him is Simon Strong at this point. Right. And so I guess kind of why do you think the reason is, as far as Simon Strong still kind of maintaining that interesting neutral position as opposed to simply declaring for Daemon outright?
Well, trying to think about the perspective from his end of things, right? I mean, this dude just landed in your backyard with a dragon and basically said, I'm in charge now. And I mean, yeah, I mean, I feel like if Simon had any hostile intentions, he would have done something like poison Damon in his sleep or something, or had someone cut his throat. I mean, like, didn't seem like he was too well guarded there, right? I mean, like he says it himself, the staff and the maintenance of the castle is very limiting, right?
Yes.
Like, there's not a whole lot to protect Damon when he is kind of incapacitated, as we see, and between the visions he's having, you almost make you wonder if Simon knows more than he's letting on, right? Or if he's colluding with, Alice Rivers, right?
Right.
Is there some room for conflict there to try and manipulate Damon, or
Right.
to purposely, get him feeling the way he's been feeling, right? Have all these crazy visions that are going to mess with his mind, and is that going to lead to him taking drastic or impulsive actions that might hurt his cause,
Right. If anything, I'll say that what's interesting about Simon Strong as a character, right? So this is a character that fully was willing to defy his liege lord, right? Lara Strong technically inherited Harrenhal as the liege lord after the death of Harwin and Sir Lionel last season, but Laris has been in King's Landing this entire time, right? And Simon is significantly older and probably has a lot more experience in running the castle. So he's a lot more experienced with the day-to-day operations of it. But right, so in comes Damon, right? And obviously he knows better than to defy Damon, but at the same time, he's also like, okay, placate this psychopath until he leaves, because he's not going to stay here very long, right? And then continue with the running of the day-to-day. But he obviously sees that, like, Damon's presence there, despite his intentions, is making things worse, for better or for worse. And so...
For every side.
Right, for every side. Like, at the end of the day, Damon is a loose cannon, and there's nothing that he's going to do. Like, we all know that if Damon had his way, for better or for worse, regardless of how smart he is battle, if Damon had his way, everybody would just be burning and aflame right now.
I mean, this whole conflict could have been avoided if he had been a proper candidate for the throne to begin with, right?
Exactly. Which, again, yes, you could technically blame on Viserys, but again, at the end of the day, Viserys, there was a reason why he never named Daemon his heir in the first place, or why he chose to not name him his heir. So, kind of, I guess what's interesting is going to see, like, I guess it's interesting that we're seeing Daemon, who was a character that was pretty much paired with other characters for the entirety of last season. Viserys, Rhaenyra, Corlys. There was never a moment, Lena. There was never a moment where Daemon wasn't with another character last season. And so seeing him kind of on his own and being forced to reckon with the consequences of his actions is very interesting, and it's going to be interesting going forward, especially when you have two characters that are kind of checking him at every turn, both from the practical and from the supernatural, with Simon Strong and Alice Rivers. So I really, really am digging this Daemon Harrenhal arc, especially once you see the effects that it has on the greater overall thing. So now, real quick, Corlys and Baela. That scene, oh man, so famously, I like how they changed this too, because in the books, it's Jacaerys that offers Corlys the position of hand after Rhaenys' death, and now you have Baela instead, which I think is a smarter choice and makes more sense. The fact that Corlys is just broken at this point,
Naturally,
literally, like
years,
he suffered a grievous wound, almost died, woke up, found out his brother was dead, his daughter is dead, his son he presumes is dead, so there go all of his heirs. So all he has is his wife and his granddaughters. Now he's declared for Rhaenyra, a side that he didn't ever really want to declare for, and only did because his wife urged him to. Now his wife is dead, so
and
no
let's face
heir.
it, he knows deep down that probably his grandchildren really probably are not his grandchildren, at least with Rhaenyra. Yeah.
Right, at least through Rhaenyra, definitely. No, he knew. There's no shot.
Like, he's got to know.
He was only declaring Jacaerys and Lucerys as being legitimate for his honor and friendship with Viserys. That was the only reason why. But he knows in his heart of hearts that Lucerys and Jacaerys and Joffrey have no relation to him at all. Let's be very clear. Corlys is not an idiot, at the least.
Yeah. What I did like about the books is that there's the ambiguity of things where, like, you don't know, because
but here's the one problem, and I hate to make it about this. The reason why you never have that suspicion is because the Valerians are white in the book. That's the only reason.
Yeah, and I don't have a problem with them being portrayed as they are.
If anything, it makes the conflict more interesting.
No, I agree, because I think actually answering the question of whether they were bastards or not, really, and they are, that really makes this so much more interesting, because Rhaenyra kind of was in the wrong in this situation, and now she's still trying to go about everything as if hey, nothing to see here, folks.
Nothing to see
Everything
here. These kids are
right?
totally Valerians. It's like,
Business as usual. Just
I
marrying
don't
off
know
my
about
children.
that.
Yep, they're
Yeah.
totally Valerian. Don't even worry
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, oh my gosh, it's a mess. It's a mess.
Yeah,
On both
it's a
sides.
mess to say the least. So, what did you think of the decision to have Bela be the one to offer Corliss the position of hand?
Well, frankly, I think that she did need something to do this season. So I'm not gonna lie, she hasn't done much.
Although remember,
but...
she came this close. She came this close to finishing off Cole and Gwaine before they had a chance to march on Rourke's rest. So that's more than we saw in the book. I'll give it that.
No, that for sure. Like we've already seen more of her, like in terms of like her contribution to the overall story than we did in the book, and I'm all for it. Just because
me too.
I felt like in the book there were just too many kids to keep track of.
There are a couple of instances of female characters, the supporting female characters, to be more specific, not having as much to do as they do in the show.
For sure, and I love that they did make that change because like. What I do like about, like, obviously this whole conflict is centered around like the sexism of the world and that they we're not ready for a woman to be queen and all that, but like you got to take the power dynamics of having dragons, right? That completely tips the scale in terms of who has power, right?
Yes.
And I feel like dragons really are the answer to everything in terms of like look at how Daemon uses his this episode, right? Like for just purely for intimidation. But anyway, sorry, I sidetracked. Getting back to Corlys and Bela, I thought that was a great scene between them, and especially because like you never really saw him interact with his grandchildren much.
It's
right?
true. Like, it's really true because here's the problem. By the time Rhaena and Bela are grown up in the first season, right? Corlys is grievously injured, grievously injured to the point where he can't even. We don't see him for 2 episodes straight before the finale. So.
I do love that, like, for the first time, it finally seems like the Valerians, like, really are a fan. Well, I guess episode, like,
right.
6,
When
7,
you
and
Saw Laenor and Laena when they were younger, right? But
right.
obviously, as time goes on, you see Laena die, Laenor flees to parts unknown, Vaemon gets his head chopped off by Daemon. You know.
But, like, I mean, after watching, like, as he said himself, like, his house is broken, right?
Yes.
Kind of seeing that little, like, moment of love and unity, I thought was really nice for a man.
It was really nice.
We've seen suffer so much and has like really just done his best to like be loyal to those he cares about,
right?
And it's brought him so much hurt and pain, and obviously we know like the Valerian house really is just never the same after this.
No,
and
they're not.
Just,
they're
it
really
is heartbreaking.
not.
Like I absolutely feel for the man.
Yeah. I'm just thinking, I'm like, Jesus Christ, his daughter, he still thinks his son is dead. Now his wife, like, oh my God.
I wonder if we will see his son again because, like,
It's
obviously, he
well,
never
remember,
shows up in the books.
Here's the thing. Remember, so there's an 8-year time jump between episode 7 and 8 when Laenor first flees, and then later on you see Rhaenyra now happily married with Daemon, and then you see Sea Smoke flying around 2 episodes ago, and Rhaenyra does say, "My late husband Laenor." Now, obviously, she could be covering for him still. She probably hasn't heard from him in years, but the rumor is that when Adam eventually claims Sea Smoke, even though obviously Laenor is confirmed in the show to be alive, not dead like he was rumored in the book, the rumor is that in the show he will be dead by this point and that they will confirm it somehow. Now, I don't know this for sure, but again, it's like, how would Sea Smoke allow another rider if Laenor is still alive? Like I said, I don't know because the show is clearly taking liberties with the book. So those are certain little details that I have to pay attention to, especially given the fact that the show is so adamant about maintaining these details. So now transition from Corlys, Jace, this episode, man, Jace finally came into his own. Finally. I mean, listen, Jace has really been doing it kind of low-key crushing it since the first episode, and really kind of low-key like the power player of the season. He goes up north, he recruits the Starks, Krieg and Stark. He flies to the Twins this episode. He gets their alliance, making some promises that he's definitely not going to be able to keep. We saw a little bit of adult Vermax. Jace is kind of coming to his own. It really sucks knowing what his fate is, considering that Jace is kind of showing that he's like made to rule, and he can like really do. And I will say, they're not having him take as much of an active role in the show as he did in the books. Like in the books, like after the death of Lucerys and Rhaenyra is like bent beyond grief, Jace is the one that's pretty much running things, right? He's the one that offers Corlys a position of hand. He's the one that executes the sowing of the seeds, and I'm glad that they kept that for the end of the episode. But man, Jaehaerys Valerian, a character who like kind of really was just a pretty face, finally coming into his own, showing that he like trying to prove his mother right, trying to prove he's like, yeah, like we are. And the other thing interesting to do about Jacaerys that I love is that since Jacaerys is Rhaenyra's firstborn, not Daemon's son, he's kind of the only, and now with Lucerys dead, he's kind of the only character that really like doesn't fear anything for Daemon, because all of Rhaenyra's other children are either Daemon's children or Joffrey's too young to really know anything. But Jacaerys like the only one that like doesn't necessarily recognize Daemon's authority and understands like the contemptuous relationship between him and his mother. So that's why I kind of really respect Jacaerys as a character, especially given the fact that like for this phase of the Dance of the Dragons, he really is a crucial power player, because the thing that I love both in this episode and the book is that Jace is the one that comes up with the idea of the sowing of the seeds, not Rhaenyra. And so now, like I said, I know we're jumping over a bunch of things, but just for the purpose of time's sake, like the sowing of the seeds, man, we finally got it. We finally got an indication. They're like, look, with Meleys gone and the Greens still have Vhagar, like, they're like, yeah, like Rhaenyra's like, look, Vhagar's bigger, but Cyrax is quicker. And Jace is like, but you are too important. That's kind of the back and forth they have. It's the same problem that they have with Daenerys whenever she rode dragons in battle. It's like, at the end of the day, it's like, look, you are too important. You are the figurehead. If we lose you, this entire conflict falls apart and the Greens win. And he's like, look.
We see how costly these battles are, right? I mean, Meleys, one of the most experienced dragons in the whole world, dead immediately, right?
Yeah.
And then, Aegon, right? We see the consequences of not really being experienced with dragon riding, although, obviously.
Now, granted, obviously, Sunfire was a much younger and more inexperienced dragon compared to Meleys, but still.
And the whole being, turned on by his brother.
Yeah, that didn't help either. But yeah.
No, I mean, these are bloody conflicts when dragons get involved. And so he has every right to fear that something might happen to his mom.
Exactly. Especially given that Cyrax, I don't even think that Cyrax has been in a battle at all.
No.
So Cyrax essentially would, especially if Cyrax went up against Vhagar, it would be the same thing as what happened with Sunfire. It would get burned to a crisp. So Jacaerys, the fact that he's like, listen, we have multiple dragons on our side that not only can match Vhagar in size, but also experience. Like we have Vermithor and Silverwing, two of the oldest and most experienced dragons. Like the Greens only have Dreamfire now that Sunfire's gone, and with Helena's the rider of Dreamfire, but she's basically useless after what happened with Blood and Sheets. Like we need to do something about this. We have these two dragons. Let's use them. And Rhaenyra's like, okay, but like, who do we have to ride them? And it's like, what if we found some riders that aren't necessarily in our bloodline? We know that we have like other people who have Targaryen blood. And so I'm like, oh man, like, I don't know about you, Eli, but like the sowing of the seed, just for me as a book reader, the sowing of the seed is one of the most interesting and fascinating events of the entire Dance of the Dragons, let alone the entire Game of Thrones conflict, where you essentially have, I don't even know how to describe it. Essentially what you have is a total drama island conflict where you have all of these people just coming together. You laugh, but listen, that's what it's like.
That's a great way to put it. No,
right, like you have all of these people just coming together, just be like, listen, come try to tame these dragons. Go at it. We can't promise that you'll come out alive. In fact, there's almost 100% guarantee that you won't. But if you do, you will have lands, you will have titles, and you'll have a dragon to ride. And as we see, like, the only dragon scene that we get in this episode is Hugh. We don't get Ulf and we don't get Adam. But, I mean, and also with the coming next week, like, we see Vermithor, we see Silverwing. I'm like, oh, man, like, we're getting ready for war. Things are heating. And I love that. And I love that the sowing of the seed is such an important event that they're going to spread it out across 3 episodes, because there's no way they're going to do it in 1 episode. No shot.
No, they're doing a disservice if they do. And I mean, we can see how far they've been building up to it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we've already
they've been doing a good job with it. I'm really happy with how they've been doing it this season.
The scene that we get in this episode with Mr., dying from sickness or starvation. I don't even know what she's dying from, but,
who knows?
His daughter on the verge of death, his wife fearing for her life and the safety of their family, right? Like, I mean, just such a great scene that, because I think, Game of Thrones is very famous for doing this in terms of like a writing, world building standpoint, where I saw in some interview where George R. R. Martin was like famous for, like, he always wanted every chapter to do like a minimum of 2 things for the overall story, whether it was like, and I mean, we see like these elements combined, just like, Aemon, like how quick he is to, getting orders, and like, he's willing to just oppress the people of King's Landing to no end to get what he wants.
Yep.
And we see how that's affecting them, and we see how that's like, going to affect the motivations of, some of the seeds, of the people of King's Landing,
100%.
to leave the cause of
And that's
Aegon.
what I love too about this episode as well, is the fact that like in the book we kind of only got the seeds. They kind of came out of nowhere if you think about it, where it's like, oh, all these people just came out to try and tame these dragons, and only these 4 succeeded, and you don't know anything about their backstory really. But in this show, you are getting the backstory. You understand Ulf, you understand Hugh, you understand Adam, you understand Alan. We haven't seen Nettles yet, but if they do introduce her, you understand and introduce all of them. And I love the deliberacies, because for the most part, again, if you have no knowledge, if you've never read the books and you have no understanding of who these characters are and why they're being introduced to the story, you're probably like, who the hell are these guys and why are they so important? Because they're so independent of the main conflict between the Blacks and the Greens.
This is what's going to make the payoffs with their storyline
so
much more satisfying.
Yes, exactly. It's just like, I'm just thirsting as a book reader, right? And I'm just thirsty for every moment, like seeing Hugh fight his way out, and the fact that it's like, oh, the king is going to pay me for all of the work that I did on those machines, and the fact that he never does, as far as like giving the motivation for Hugh to go to Dragonstar, and the fact that Hugh, of all people, is the one to tame Vermithor, who we see is the second largest living dragon after Vagar. Like, oh man, and like, I don't know if you stuck around for the coming of the next season, but the fact that we got Silverwing, and the fact they modified not only Dreamfire from last season, but Silverwing almost directly after Drogon, I'm like, I'm losing my shit right now. Like,
I can't wait.
Insane. I cannot wait. Yeah.
So we've got plenty of excitement coming.
We got a lot to look forward to. So with that being said, I think it's a perfect place to leave off, right? I think we've recapped this episode exactly because, like I said, it's a setup episode. It's a transition episode. It's a perfect halfway point. Episode 5 region. What do you rate, Eli? What do you rate this episode out of 5 before we get out of here?
Oh, I'm going to give it a 4.5. Like I said, I'm going to reserve 5 stars for very few number of episodes, but this is just under that tier. And I thought this accomplished everything it needed to for the madness that is to come with the sowing of the seeds. And
I agree. Yeah, I agree. Could not agree more. Again, sowing of the seeds was set up so perfectly. Cannot wait for it. Oh, man. I'm so looking forward. Adam riding Sea Smoke, Hugh riding Vermithor, Ulf riding Silverwing. If we get Nettles riding Sheepstealer, that'd be cool. I don't know. We saw images, so I'm assuming we do get her. They might introduce her without showing her name, but whatever the case is, right? Rook's Rest, that was just a setup. Sowing of the Seeds, oh my God, I cannot wait. I give this episode 4.5 out of 5. This is just as good of a setup episode as I could have hoped for. Yep. Man, I'm excited. I'm excited for what happens next. So, Eli, with that being said, thanks for joining me once again. Eli, we got one more episode of The Boys. We got 3 more episodes of House of the Dragon, but we got one more episode of The Boys. You, unfortunately, will not be able to make it for this coming week. But, Eli, you've been crushing it with all of these recaps, man. You truly are a trooper. Where can the good people follow you on the interwebs?
Well, at the moment, still no YouTube channel. Give us some time, we'll get there. But yeah, if you want to find me, you can find me at Instagram, eholicky45. That's E_Holicky45, like you see it spelled on the screen. And yeah, there you go.
Yeah, there we go. I just realized this entire episode, I'm like, oh, whoops, we had it in the wrong spot.
Yep, and but yeah, that's so shoot me a DM. Happy to talk all things storytelling. I'm a huge fan of the fantasy genre. I don't think you'll find a person. Anyone that will co-host an episode with Dom that is a bigger fantasy fan than me. I love to talk about the genre as a whole. I feel like I've learned more about people through the fantasy genre than like nonfiction works, and I love it to no end. And yeah, if you want any kind of storytelling, I'm happy to talk about it. Movies, TV, books, whatever it may be. So yes, shoot me a DM, and that's where I'm at.
Absolutely. Go follow this guy with everything he's got going on. Of course, follow me with everything going on at Movie Nerd Reviews, at Official Talkin TV Podcast. Subscribe on YouTube, Twitch, all of the above. Follow us on X. And as always, people, 12 seasons of short film. Watch more fucking movies. We'll be back next week. Finale of The Boys, Season 4 recap. We've been building up to it at this point. We're going to see what happens. And like I said, 3 more weeks of House of the Dragon, sowing of the seeds. Summer blockbuster season is not over yet, but it is coming to a close. And as always, people, 12 seasons of short film, and watch more fucking movies and TV shows. We'll see you guys next week for episode 6 of House of the Dragon.
Hours following King Viserys' death.
My brother was a slave to his omens and portents. Anything to make his feckless reign appear to have purpose.
What are we going to do about it?
Did you really think that you could just fly about the realm trying to steal my brother's throne?